Hello and welcome to Adobe Muse Jam Session recording 154. My name is Dani Beaumont and I'm a Principal Product Manager on the Adobe Muse team. And in today's session we're going to focus on the ability to edit an Adobe Muse website in any web browser using something known as InBrowser Editing. So thanks for joining us today. I am joined by Laurel D'Angelo from our product marketing side of Adobe Muse. There may be some in-browser editing engineers that might join us today. We shall see. It's awfully early when you're an engineer to start at 9, you know. Did I say that out loud? Also joined by Haley from our Muse team. She helps keep the engine running for us. And we'll go ahead and get started. So I'm going to switch my layout. If you have questions as we go along, it's really great to add them to the lower right-hand corner. You are welcome to chat to one another. The premise behind the session is we really have a topic each week, but it's an open door for you to ask questions of the community as well as some of the folks on the Muse team about anything that's going on with you with Muse. We may defer it if it's a deep question that requires kind of a Muse Jam session for a future date. But feel free to go ahead and talk about anything on or off topic. Laurel will help keep an eye on what's going on there with me, and I will specifically keep an eye on the question pod there as we go along. So let me go ahead and start to share my screen, and we will get going. Now, as usual, I have a series of resources here for in-browser editing. I've got the standard tutorial for Muse. I've got a really interesting, I kind of really would like some feedback on this one. I've got an interesting video for in-browser editing, and let's even start there just for a second. The idea is we don't need to see me do this really, but it's on YouTube, and the premise behind the video is that you as a web designer have built out a site in Muse. You may or may not have let that designer know what tool you're using, Muse, Dreamweaver, Handcoder, it's kind of irrelevant. But this online video is designed for you to actually give to your business owner, the website owner, to let them know how they can go about editing the site. Now, in talking to designers that use Muse and use in-browser editing and how they like to teach their end site customer to use Muse, to use in-browser editing, a lot of folks will actually record a video of their own that actually shows the real site for your client and how to go about editing it. A lot of times what we hear about the reality of small businesses is that you can't always train up your staff to learn your software interface because you have turnover. You may have new employees that are coming and going. So recording up a video similar to the one that I've done here that shows them around the site and how they can use in-browser editing to edit the site is an awfully good idea. And if you've done this, I would love if you could send me a link to videos that you might have created. The idea is that they get to see their own site in action and can understand how to edit and how to make changes. So that is a resource that's available there. Some of the classics will be going to muse.adobe.com. In the events area, there's the recording we're doing now with in-browser editing. There probably is an in-browser editing tutorial down here. I know for sure I've given you a link of the in-app tutorial that shows you through the solution, but always a good idea to swing through here and take a look at some of the resources that are available. Let's go ahead and get started with this design. I'm going to switch over into Muse, and I'm going to go ahead and open up an existing site. All right, so I've got one of a simple template that I've been working with of late. We're working on some starter templates to give to brand new Muse users just to make using Muse a little easier. And this is one of the designs that we're in the middle of working on. It's a nice basic straight up design to show off the features. What I do want to point out though is when I created this file, if I were to pull down on File to New Site, in the Site Properties window, you have the ability. That's kind of funny. Just looking here for a second. If I come into my existing site and go File, Site Properties, Notice that in the existing site design, so if I say File New, this is going to be turned on by default. But if you have an older site that you would like to enable InBrowser Editing that may or may not have that enabled, or I guess more importantly, if you don't want to let the site owner be able to log in and make edits in the browser, if you'd like to disable that, the way that you do that is to pull down on File to Site Properties, and notice down here below Language, you have Enable InBrowser Editing, and that's a toggle you can turn on and off. There's also enabling Synchronized Text on and off. If I were to just say File New Site, that's going to automatically be selected. If I click OK, I could then come into my site properties, and those options appear there. So the first thing you want to do is make sure that's turned on, especially if you're troubleshooting and things don't seem to be working. That's a good place to check. Next thing you want to do is really start to be familiar with what we allow you to edit and what we don't allow you to edit. Now I'm going to go ahead and jump in and tell you there's a couple feature requests I know that the community has been asking for. I echo your sentiments. One would be being able to allow you to control the graphic styles, or I'm sorry, the text styles in containers. Definitely on a list and important to us. Being able to edit hyperlinks, definitely on a list and important to us. But as you work with the tool, there are ways you can allow more or less editability, and you really, as you're designing a site, want to kind of think through in-browser editing and then look back on your design to make those conscious decisions. And I've got kind of a list. I pulled it out of our help document, so it's a list that you could put together pretty easily. And that list talks about what are the elements that are not editable in the browser and what are. So if you look at this list right now, master page content is not editable at the moment. Vertically oriented text, so if you're using, let's say, double byte characters, Chinese, Japanese, and you want to edit that, we're not supporting it. Images that are set as a background fill are not editable in browser editing, so that's a real important one to keep in mind. Slideshow containers, we'll play a little bit with that together today. Submit buttons for forms, you can't rename the button. And then dynamically generated menu labels. So let's kind of look at this a little bit. I do have a finished site. I think it's a good idea to start here and just see where we are and then how we can vary a couple things. But knowing where I'm headed, I'm going to show you some of those variables up front. So I have a master page, and on the master page, I have a menu here. I'm not even certain. This is a dynamic menu. So the pages that you see here, Home, Portfolio, My Story, and Contact, they relate directly to the site plan. So if you look at this site plan, you'll notice I've got Home, Portfolio, My Story, and Contact. Now, one of the things I really want you to think about as you work with the Muse team and help us fine-tune in-browser editing is what is the purpose of this tool? Some folks have said to us, you know what, Dani? In-browser editing, I want my user to be able to add pages, to change the titles of menus and such. I want them to be able to add new slideshows, add containers, add text objects. It starts to be kind of a real question around whether or not that really belongs in the browser or belongs in the Muse application. I believe that it's not inappropriate, that it could actually be appropriate for you to give a license to Adobe Muse to your site owner and let them make edits on their site directly within the application. I think you really want to ask yourself that question. Now, of course, there's the licensing issue. They'd have to license the application, and in-browser editing is free. But there are times where pushing the envelope of how much they would do in the browser might not be the right choice for the team. So we want to consider that and get feedback from you about how far we should go in implementing these features. So I'm going to show you just an example of how menus can work, though. I've got a dynamic menu that's here. I'm going to come in and actually just kind of cheat a little bit here. I'm going to press and drag a second instance of the menu. And what I'll do is under menu type, I'm going to change this to be a manual menu. Now the styling that I've applied to this menu item, it's going to be retained here, but I'm going to come in and kind of manually make these changes. So I'm going to call this Home. And I'll add a couple more fields. So we've got home. I'll go ahead and add portfolio, my story, and lastly, contact. Now these are exactly the same at the moment. They appear to be, but there will be a big difference when you're in InBrowser Editing. Specifically, manual menus can be edited in InBrowser Editing, whereas dynamic menus cannot be edited. Now there's going to be one big gotcha here that I'm just remembering. I'm going to go ahead and cut that second menu. In fact, I kind of want to show this off a little bit. We're winging it, folks, but I'm going to grab both of these menus and I'm going to copy them. And just to kind of prove my case a little bit here, I'm going to create a scratch page, just a play page here. Call it, well, let's just call it play, because I've got to find it in a minute. And in our little play date area here, I'm going to drop these two menus that we're working with. And I'm just going to label them so that we can follow along with the controls and how you set this up. Give myself a quick little indicator here. Oh, let's see. And let's lastly, got to give it a character style, paragraph style, don't I? Let's see, I'm not sure which one I want to give it, but something reasonable. A little bit big. Oh, how about that? Okay. Let's make sure I didn't lie here. This is definitely a manual menu and this is a dynamic menu. So we're just going to do some comparisons here. I'm going to also come in while we're at it. Bear with me. I know we're jumping in pretty deep pretty fast. But I want to show you another example of how things can be treated differently. So I'm going to come in and I'm going to create a container. And in the container, I am going to fill with an image. And I'm going to go ahead and define this as scale to fill the container. Now I'm going to use a beautiful new Muse feature, which I really love. I can come in here. I'm going to be really lazy. Watch this. I'm going to copy the background image. I'm going to go here and cut it. Same thing. I don't want it to be a background image. I'm going to just come in and paste it in place. Whoops, not the best methodology. Let's take another approach. Tried to be fancy, but you can copy background images and then paste them on the canvas. I'm just gonna go ahead and press and drag this guy rather than deal with placing it in the other way. All right, see what you get when you try to be fancy. So what I have here, just to differentiate, is I have image fill and I have image place. Okay, so we've got a manual menu, a dynamic menu, image fill, and image place. We're going to keep going with that because I want to show the differences as we go along. We're doing a little bit of a test case. But if you look at my design, what I want to stop and think about, you really want to take note, what are the types of content that your site owner is going to want to change in the browser, and how are you configuring your site to make that happen? Now, I mentioned that anything on a master page is not editable in the browser. Anything that is on an individual page from a text standpoint will be editable. Now I've gone in and I've got a couple things going on here. Let's just start with a simpler page. We've got recent work here. And in recent work I've got some Greeking, some text that is placed in this area here. And we'll just let that be. But this is standard place text. I've got the recent work headline here. Now, also when you're working in InBrowser Editing, if you are thinking in terms of containers that viewers can come in, that site owners can come in and edit, you're going to want to make sure that the containers that you're creating kind of support the extreme rule rather well. So this is recent work, and that's fine. Maybe I don't envision that being changed by my client. But my name, for example, right now I've got a container that's drawn here. And if I were to come in and just sort of test to see if I change this, if I tried Dani Beaumont, it works pretty well. It's kind of a pretty large font. So maybe I might decide I'll bring the point size down a little bit for someone with such a long name. And I'll switch that back to the default. But you're going to kind of want to look at each container. So I've got a designer. If someone's title happened to be much longer, I may go ahead and this is kind of interesting, increase the width of the container. But you'll notice I'm not going to increase the height of the container, which is kind of interesting. This has to do with soft bottoms, as they call it in engineering. But the ability that Muse has to grow containers larger and move content below those containers as that content changes. But I've got some text that's set here, and it will be editable. You'll notice if I click on this image, the image is set as a background fill image. So I may stop and think about, do I really need this to be scaled to fill as a background image? Based on the design, if it's a 100% width object that's going to grow based on the background browser, I probably will want it to be a fill image. But this one could very easily, if I want to allow this to be changed in the browser, I could change this, as I did in that other example, to be a placed image instead. Another thing that we could talk about is a feature that we added a couple releases ago called Synchronized Text. And I, for one, believe it's a good step in the right direction, but it's kind of lacking one major capability, which is for individual synchronized text containers to have mixed typographical styles. So as I show you this, you'll kind of see how this is amazing and also kind of challenging for you from a design standpoint to design around. So I've got text here. Let's go ahead and go to another page that I have not applied this to. We'll come on into, let's say, recent work. If I am designing for smartphone, tablet, and desktop, what I can do is make sure that content that I know occurs on different layouts and different alternate layouts is defined as synchronized text or something that will be shared across those layouts. So I've got this area recent work, and let's say I assume that that will be editable by my client and should be updated or does occur on both my smartphone, tablet, and desktop design. Notice here in this content panel, I opened up the panel from the window drop down here for content. I've got a collection or a set of tags that are synchronized text. Let's create a new one just so you can see how I did that. So I believe if I come on in here and create a new correct collection, we'll just call this Dani Set. What I can do is come to an object here. Notice I've got Dani Set content. It's tagged as such there. I may call this recent work. So I'm giving it a tag so that I know what it is. It occurs right over here. I can then share this across my layouts kind of in a couple different ways. I'm going to go ahead and come here and just copy this onto the clipboard. I'm going to hit Command J to jump to a portfolio for the tablet. So I'm going to jump over there. And I can see recent work is here in the tablet layout of the design. I'm going to go ahead and delete that, and I'm going to paste the version that I have that has that synchronized text tag on it. It's kind of in the way here for a second. I can decide how large I want the container to be. I may want to set it to a max width of a certain amount, or I may let it span the whole width of the site. We'll go ahead and reduce it to the text that's here. But notice how it says Dani Set recent work. And it did carry over the styling. I think we've improved that a little bit. It used to break the styling a little bit. But that styling is there. Now I may say to myself, you know what? For this instance of this text that's going to reoccur across layouts, when somebody's on a tablet, I may think that that text should be larger. I may also think, for whatever reason, that the text in the tablet instance should be a different color. I'm just doing this to kind of make a mess is what I'm doing. Let's go ahead and pull a color that exists in the design a little bit there. So I've changed the color very subtly. Let's try that again. In a way that has meaning, Dani. Grab one of those lighter greens. Okay. So I've now changed the point size of the text and I've changed its color. Now, it's kind of silly in this example, but as a designer, when you are designing for tablet, smartphone, and desktop, the assumption is that given the fact that your container, your phone, for example, is so much smaller, you're going to want to change the styling of this text to adjust to the medium. Let's go ahead and go to the phone layout. So this is Portfolio. I'm going to go to the phone version now. And once again, I'm going to delete that other instance and I'm going to paste the tablet instance in this case. And just to kind of drive the point home a little bit more, because I'm on a phone, I'm going to go ahead and grow this a little larger too. Maybe not that large, just slightly larger. Okay, so I now have tagged elements that are reoccurring across layouts. Notice my name is tagged and it also occurs there. Now looking at that, let me just see this for a second. I'm going to go back to my plan mode, jump over to my phone. I want to see this guy right here. Now, I have to be honest, I was reading about the details about this feature, and what it described was that anything on a master page cannot be edited. But I think that the documentation's old. I think we've changed that, and you now do have the ability to edit. This is why it's a jam session. I got to learn from my engineers if they're present, or people who know as much or more as I do, to find out these details. But I'm pretty sure that if I change this, even though it's on a master page, we're now supporting it with synchronized text. So I'm going to go with that assumption until it doesn't work. Notice that I do have a tag here, a tag for my title. I'm going to go ahead and just make sure I'm kind of making a little bit of room for changes in that content. So I'm going to swing back and see how the world is going. Okay. All right, people are chatting. That's great. We're going to keep going. So I've got some of my basics set up now. We've talked a little bit about images. We've talked about how menus can be static or dynamic. And we've gone in and checked the static text that I'm working with across my layouts and allowed some of it to be synchronized across the layouts. Now I do want to make another point. We have this constant dialogue amongst the team and in the community around responsive and alternate layouts and which has advantages over the other. Alternate layouts, in essence, allow you to come in and say, for each of my pages, what exactly is the layout I want to have for classes of devices, smartphones, tablets, and desktop devices. There's an advantage there in that you as a designer control exactly how that looks. You're not hitting a bunch of breakpoints with things squishing and moving and resizing across those layouts. A disadvantage can be that you have to remember to go to each layout and make a change if you make it on one. So one way to overcome that I've just shown you has been being able to tag something like recent work here, to tag the instance of text so that as it's shared across the layouts, it will update. And I'm going to show you that in a moment. Another way that we just have always done that within Muse around images has to do with how images are optimized in the background of a site. So I've got a slideshow here, and in it I've got a thumbnail preview. I've also got the full screen instance of this image. So let's just kind of show how this slideshow is set up right now. I think I've got a light box on here, but I could be wrong. There you go. I use the I very loosely. This is a template that's developed by Ali Pordelli from Cookie, is working with us on this. So it's really his work. I'm just taking credit. But you'll notice I've got thumbnails here on the right, and I've got images there on the left. And those images, that thumbnail and full screen image, has been placed on all three layouts. So if I come into the Assets panel and kind of want to understand what's going on there, notice I've got this TD Works 02. And this is this individual image right here. And that image is occurring, has both a thumbnail on the page and a full lightbox image. But you'll notice over here that same image also occurs in the tablet instance of the design and in the mobile version of the design, the phone layout of the design. So phone, tablet, and desktop, this slideshow has been placed 3 times. The point that I want to make is, as a designer, if you realize that the color is really off on this particular image, what you can do is go to the occurrence of that image and select Edit Original. You can then jump out to an editing application, Photoshop, Fireworks, make some edits to that design. When you hit save, Muse will realize that that has changed, and it will allow you to update the reference image. What that effectively does, though, is updates not just the one instance I'm looking at here, but if I come in and edit this original, it's going to update all of the instances of this image across the site. So although I have multiple layouts, alternate layouts, I can edit once and it deploys to all of those instances. The other thing that's pretty terrific is that Muse really carefully looks at the images that it's rendering. And if there's only a slight variance between the image on desktop and tablet, let's say tablet, it's scaled down by 10% to fit the footprint of a tablet device, Muse is going to upload those images as few times as necessary, and then have the viewer of the site download those as few times as necessary. So we may use CSS to tell the tablet instance of that image to scale down by 90%. We'll do it in code. If we have to, we'll upload another image. But my point is that although we have alternate layouts, if you look at the back-end code and if you're really curious about seeing exactly what Muse is doing here, when you pull down on File, if you select Export as HTML, this is an awfully nice lazy man way to see what we're doing around code generation, image optimization, any self-hosted fonts that you might be including, any assets that you're uploading. Go ahead and export to a folder and then look at what occurs in that folder to see what gets output. You'll be surprised to see how few instances of images we really do generate, even when you have the 3 different layouts. All right, this is a very slow preamble, but we're going to get to the fun part soon. So I have these images and they also have shared elements. Let's go ahead and see what happens when I publish this site up to InBrowser Editing, and then we're going to come back and fiddle so that I can help you troubleshoot around ways that things aren't editable that you would like to be editable. All right, so we've got our page set up pretty well here. We've gone in and done most of the basics. Next thing you're going to want to do is go ahead and publish the site. So I'm going to pull down in this instance on File to Upload to FTP Host. I am going to use a GoDaddy instance of the site that I have, so adobemusedemo.com. You'll notice I'm actually pushing it into a subfolder, a starter folder. I can do that just by FTPing into that subfolder. So we'll go ahead and click OK, and I'm going to upload the site. I'm going to create that subfolder. Let's just see. I think we're okay with this. Go ahead and upload that. Now, one thing that I will tell you while this is happening is if you're using a third-party hosting platform or InBrowser Editing on Adobe Business Catalyst for that matter, what you want to do, depending on the dynamic of what happened there, you're going to want to make sure you have the right accounts in place. So often you approach a client, they say, I'd love for you to redo my website, it's really old and terrible. You say, sure, you work on a new design. Then you ask the client, where do you host your existing site? Can you give me the FTP details so that I can upload a new version of the site? They say, sure, they give you these details, and you do what I'm doing, which is publish the site up. In another instance, you'll notice I haven't changed out some of Mr. Pordelli's email here, but those are minor warnings around my contact form, so we'll let that be for now. But in another instance, you get hired by a client. Client says, I'd love to have a website. You say, sure. You go buy hosting for them, and then you enable InBrowser Editing. You may not want to let the client have full FTP control over your site. You may want to limit that in some manner, or you may not want them to know what your login details are. what you'll want to do is in the hosting platform, you're going to want to create multiple accounts so that your site owner can log in and you can log in. It can be the same exact FTP details. It's not as though one login would have more control than another, although that depends on your hosting platform. For GoDaddy, I have an admin login, and then I have created individual logins for my sites so that users can upload that content. All right, I've paused here because I wanted to point out that now that I've uploaded this to my hosting platform, you'll notice that it says the content can be edited by InBrowser Editing, and it gives me a link. Notice that the link not only takes me to InBrowserEditing.adobe.com, but it actually points me to the actual login URL for the site that we're working with. I can click this link, or alternatively, just to kind of let you know how we got there, I can just go to InBrowserEditing.com. So InBrowserEditing.adobe.com. I'm correct myself there. If you're new to InBrowser Editing, clicking on this Get Help is kind of a good place to find out any common issues. You can also log any issues that you're seeing. This is kind of a fast track to the folks that work on InBrowser Editing, so that is there. You can come in and choose the language. That's interesting. We have obviously a number of languages that the InBrowser Editing interface has been localized into. I'm going to go ahead and log in now. So I could either go grab that URL that I got, or let's see if I can remember what my URL should be here. Probably not. Let me swing back and cheat a little bit. I'm going to borrow this bit because I have a tiny mind and I don't usually use this site. So I've just gone in and grabbed the URL, adobemusedemo.com, and I am doing a funny thing where I'm putting into a subfolder here. So I'm going to try Starter and click Start Editing. I'm going to now log in, so I think it's like edit me at hitting the wrong key there. Hold on. So edit me at my domain, adobemusedemo.com. My password, we all know what that is. And I'm going to go ahead and try to sign in here. So InBrowser Editing does a very amazing quick conversation with GoDaddy and says, hey, are you hosted there? Are these the FTP details? Excellent. It then grabs what it needs about the site and brings it into the browser so that I'm now able to edit my site. Now in InBrowser Editing, you'll notice there's a top navigation here. This is important. This allows you to jump between your different alternate layouts. So if you're training up your business owner and they're going to come in and change my name and it's shared across all three layouts, you're going to encourage them to go ahead and take a look and make sure that they haven't added so many characters that they no longer can, that they've broken the layout, for example. But we'll start kind of simple. We've got that landing page that we defined. There's the navigation twice here that I've defined. But notice how as I roll over this navigation, I can't come in and make any changes, either the dynamic instance or the manual instance. And that's because I put it on my master page. That's what I'm going to believe at the moment until we find out differently. When I roll over the image that's here, notice that there's no ability to edit or do anything with that image because that is a background image. Now, if I roll over the words my name, you'll notice I get this edit indicator. I can either just click in the container or click on edit, and it brings up an out of context. It'd be great if this was in context, but it's out of context. It does the job. Instance of the text. Now, I am showing you a suspiciously non-mixed text style container because it's a synchronized text container and it needs to be a single style. But I'm going to show you how mixed cases work in just a moment. So I may come in and say my name. We decided that Dani looked pretty good. Let's try by full name. See if we can break the layout. And I'll click Update. Now see what happened that's kind of good and interesting but bad. And that's that Beaumont actually went to the next line. I'm going to come in here and say, let's try this. So kind of big text with hard line breaks. I'm still getting a Beaumont break here. But notice what does happen. That container grows. And in all honesty, hello, Laurel D'Angelo. I'm no longer alone. In all honesty, it's a little tricky to me to see when the containers move the content down below it and when they don't. This is an engineering opportunity for a question to be answered. But we're going to leave that one alone for the moment. So I've made that edit. I may want to come in and say, happy to meet you, or happy to be. Obviously, I'm making a mess and just making some changes here. See what happened here? This container stacked on itself. And that's because it's going to grow in height, but I didn't stretch it long enough to kind of have a long line of text. So this is why I encourage you to come on in InBrowser Editing and see how it works in the browser. These are cases we can go ahead and fix together. So I've made this lovely little mess here now. I'm going to come on in and publish that up. So I, as the business owner, have now updated my website, and those changes are live. The live site now has those actual changes that we've made. Bear with me, we're going to kind of iterate back and forth to the app. But I now want to go to the next page. So I'm going to go ahead and jump over to Portfolio. Let me see this guy. And in the portfolio, wow, see, this is why we have fun together. I just saw an error come up, and it's recorded, so I'm going to grab it again. Let's go back and be a little less complicated. I'm going to reload my site for a second. Okay, let's try to jump over to Portfolio, kind of do it the right way. So I'm using the navigation to jump to my next page. This is where I think, again, Muse is interesting. If I come in and I grab this Greeking text and decide that I want a whole ton of text, and then I click Update, notice how it actually, with its soft bottom, it has gone in and moved all of the rest of the content of the site down on the page. Now this is where I am saying that maybe the documentation was a little out of date. Notice that I'm able to come into this thumbnail and actually do one of two things. This is an important thing to point out. I can come in and edit the thumbnail, or I can make that a click. So this is a thumbnail that when clicked is going to bring up a light box. If I click instead of edit, I can actually bring up that thumbnail instance. Maybe, maybe not. Let's try this again. All right. So I have gone in and it's now allowing me to come in and edit that image. Now this is another thing that's important to talk about. So let's say you are working on a site. I'm going to close this out for a second. Say you're working on a site for your client, and this gallery, maybe it's Katie's Cafe, and you know that Katie does a promo every week. And when you work with Katie, Katie's not the most amazing photographer. Katie also really barely understands the web. So you don't want to let her wreck your site. What you're able to do when you set up the site is you can create an assets folder that has a series of images. Let's say you know that Katie's going to promote her cakes, her pastries, her coffee, things of that sort. And you've got a full photo library of images that you've gone in and optimized and made attractive so that they're going to look good in this design. So the actual height and width, the ratio, the colors, any shadows or effects you might apply to the object, you've got that all set. What you're able to do, and I'll show you this back in Muse, is you can just upload those images so that they're there in the hosting platform, even if they're not currently being used by the site. So that your site owner could come in and say, yes, I would like to edit the existence of this image. You click on Edit. Notice that they can choose from either other images that have already been uploaded to the site or something they may have on their computer. Now let's say they just took their iPhone and they took a photo of the latest item that they want to showcase. If you allow them to do that, what you have to explain to them is there is a height and width. These thumbnails have a certain size. And if they're going to upload any old image from their computer, it needs to have the same X and Y ratio, or else things are not going to go well for them. As I scroll along down here, though, you'll see I can see all of the images that are currently being used on the site. So I could come in and select another image and just click Update, and Muse is going to go in and make that change for me. When things go bad, let's say I came in to edit and my client uploaded it from, let's say I go to my computer, always dangerous. I go to Browse to Upload, and I'm just going to grab something that has nothing to do with anything. So we've got a little hero image. I'm going to click Open. Now I've uploaded that from my own computer to InBrowser Editing. When I click Update, it will allow me to take any image from my own computer, but I already know the dimensions are off here. It doesn't look awful, but it's not the greatest thing ever. So I've got a different crop going on here, but I am able to change these images. And when I hit Publish, it will go ahead and publish that up. All right, Laurel D, how are we doing? Anything I should jump into now?
Marcy, just a quick question from Marcy at the moment, which was she thought this was a slideshow portion that you were
It is.
Marcy, you may want to give us a little bit more feedback in the chat so we can...
Well, here's the question Marcy and I both have at the moment, which is I had read in documentation that slideshows could not be updated. So I believe the documentation's a little old, and we've updated support to support slideshows. The question is, did the thumbnail and the lightbox image change when I changed it here? And I'm not positive, because we're all learning together. Okay, but let's go ahead and keep going. I've gone in and I've made those changes, right? Now, I'm kind of curious. We've got recent work. Remember how I made this shared, I believe. So we've got recent work. I'm going to come in and change this and say my finest work. And I'm going to click Update. So there I got a change. And I'm going to go ahead and publish that. What I'm curious about now is if I jump to the phone layout. Come on. Some days the demo gods don't want to be your friend. Let's try this. I think I can do this. Let's see how this goes. Phone / portfolio. Brute force. All right, so notice what happened there. Managed to get to the phone layout, and my finest work, remember it used to say my work, now it says my finest work. So that synchronized text made the change to the text. It retained any CSS styling attributes that were unique. We've got my finest work. So everything was good. That behaved well. But as I mentioned, had I came in and broken my text, let's say I decided it was my finest text working. See how I get a bad break? Your client, they're going to be able to make messes in this manner. So you're going to want to encourage them, if they are making the changes, to look at all instances across all of the layouts. Okay? All right, I've done all that. Client went in. Let's say your business owner went off and they updated the site for a couple months, and then they called you up and said, hey, Dani, I'd like to make some changes to my site. You say, sure, but you're afraid you're going to wreck everything they've done to the live instance because they've done it in the browser, and your Muse file is now out of sync with your live instance. So I'm going to come back into Muse now. And what I can do, I already have the application open and the file open. Chances are I would open it up when they called and said, hey, Dani, can we do some new work? But if it's already open, that's fine. I can pull down on File and force the synchronization of the local version with the remote instance. If I opened it for the first time, we automatically do that check and look to the remote instance. What we do is keep a manifest. So we're not looking at the site live necessarily, but we have a manifest of changes, and we're comparing that manifest, and we know that things have changed. So if I come in and say synchronize with web version, it's going to now look at that manifest, look for changes, and then let me as the designer make a decision about the changes that have been made. So I may be, well, you know what, my site owner does not have design as their first goal. And they go in and they make a mess, but they don't mind if I clean things up. So let me just look at what they've done. If I select Preview on Page, it's going to show me that instance of the page with the text in context there. I can then choose to merge or not merge. And as I do so, I can just not merge this change. I can ignore all changes. So I have the ability to control this, but I might come in and say, you know what? Here's the old version, my name. New version is Danielle Ann Beaumont with a bad T. I may go ahead and merge it. I'm going to let that happen. I went ahead and hit my finest working, came over there too. Happy to be. I'm going to let these all come. Or I can say skip that one, that's a real mess. But I am previewing it as I'm going along. I'm like, sure, have all the Greeking on your text that you'd like. And then I click done. What I'm able to do now as I come into the file is start to look at the layout. So I may move some of my content down to adjust to the messes that they've made. I may realize that my containers aren't large enough, so I can come back out to this area and say, you know what, I don't want to make it any larger than that. The girl's got a really long name, so let's just go ahead and by default make sure that that text is smaller. I've at least captured the changes that they've made, and I can come and iterate here a little bit. Now I wanted to talk about mix styling some with you. So let's go in. We haven't played with our play page yet. We're going to go back to that. But let me just steal a little bit of text real quick. Heck, try this one. And I'm going to go back to my play page. And let's just drop that in. What I'm going to do is specifically add some mix styling here. Now these guys are pinned, which is why they're moving around in a really odd way. Let's unpin them and make sure this is not a footer. Okay. And get this out of the way a little bit. I know, I forgot to put in a memo with the demo gods today. They're going to play havoc with me. I'm going to give myself a little more space here. And I've got some text. So what I want to do is mix this up a little bit. Make it somewhat bigger. Fix a typo while I'm there. I may decide that make it easier should be really big and in a much fancier typeface. So goodness knows. Maybe this one. No. Let's try a little bit of boldness and very large. So I now have a mixed case, mixed text here. To be really clear, if I go to the content area and I try to make this a synchronized text element, it's going to lose the styling. So I can't do it as synchronized text. I would have to copy and paste this into each design and make sure my site owner went in and edited it by hand. This may be misspelled. We're going to let it be. Okay. So let's go ahead and republish with these bits. I did want to, I'm going to go ahead and republish. So I'm going to go ahead and FTP this up to the server. Let's go into that play page and see what we got going on. So when you're dealing with subfolders here, it's really important you make sure you keep that set. I don't want to update the root there. I'm going to ignore that. We'll let that publish up again. Any other questions I can jump into while we're publishing?
If there's time, could you recap on setting tags for syncing text?
Totally.
And question from RC, do you get an email from Adobe when a client updates their site so you can check it?
We do not get an email when a client updates a site. That's an interesting point because we sure could. That's a nice feature request. I mean, we know that we already use email communications for contact forms. I think that's pretty interesting, but no, not at the moment. Okay, let's go back to our site. I'm just gonna be a little lazy here and see if I can refresh and get where I need to go. All right, we know that there's a play page. It's not in my nav, so I can type it in here, play. Actually, no, I can't. It's not going to work. I might have gotten it mad there. Let's try that again. See, now I have to remember the name of this site, you guys. Adobe Muse demo. Okay. How hard is that? Not hard. Gonna log in again. Let's try it without www. Or more importantly, with the / starter in the name. Erg. Logins, passwords, they drive you crazy. Okay, signing in. Let's go take a look at our play page. So we got index. I'm going to go to play. See if I can get there. So it's not in my navigation, but I can still get there. You can, or not. Let's try this again without the PHP. Just being mean to me in browser editing. Okay, here's my play page. So as we recall, we were going to test a couple different things. I've got a dynamic menu. When I roll over it, I can click to locations, but I can't change it. The manual menu, however, is editable. So I could come in and if my client, again, I'm asking why, but people ask for this feature. If my client wants to change the menu name, I could come in and call this Portofino or good stuff, because I don't know how to spell Portofino right now. So I am able to change that name. Notice I can either follow the link and go to that page, or I can edit the link and change what is known there. I can do that for manual menus, not dynamic. If I fill with a background image, that image cannot be changed. If I place the image can be changed. Now I've got this very pretty mixed context text here, and there's a way you want to behave with this. So let's take note. We've got some pre-designed content too, is using one style, and then make it easier is using another style. If I want to change the words make it easier, what I'm going to do, to be bizarre, is I'm going to make sure that I click inside the style for that content. So if I click right in front of the M here, it may inherit the to styling. But if I click right inside and change the words and then hit the backspace, I know it's odd, but it works. So if I come into here, I'm going to click right after the letter M there, and I can even see a little bit what I'm doing here. I want to be right in this spot so I know the styling is there. So I say, Mike, I'm easier, you guys. And then I hit update. And notice that it at least inherited that styling. I can come in and get rid of my extra M and click update. If instead I were to click right on the word you, and I add potato, I honestly don't know if it's going to take the larger styling or the smaller styling. I spelled potato wrong, but it took the smaller styling. Let's just not do potatoes today. So I'm going to click update. Okay, so you can have mixed styling. When you come in to edit that styling, you want to tell the person that's doing that editing to click inside the active style text to kind of grow it, because it's wrapped by character styling. Okay, and then I'll just publish that up, wash and repeat, all of that stays the same. So Margie asked a question, asked a question about synchronized text and looking at that one more time. So if I were to start from a little bit from scratch, I'm going to take everything off the page here. I'm going to steal some of this beautiful text, take everything off the page. So, hold on, I just need some words. Here's some great words. Or not. Here's some great words, which reminds me to talk about the free widget of the day. Okay, here I am in Muse. I've got some words. Okay, I am going to come in, give them a little bit of styles, paragraph styles. Let's say I've got name. And then you notice here I am going to come in, select some text and cut it. And I'm going to create a second container. I'm going to do that very much on purpose. I'm going to make this container a certain size, maybe delete any empty space that it's got. Drag this guy down for simplicity's sake and dupe it. Come in and put the rest of my text. This one I'm going to make very different with its standard formatting. I'm going to make it a very different typeface. And I'm going to go ahead and show you why this matters. So if I have a third instance here, and all I want to do is make this bold. Whoops. Let's do it the right way. And all I want to do is add a link here that says adobe.com. So I've got a hyperlink in that text. This one will not work with synchronized text because I'm going to lose my styling and I'm going to lose my link. So the way I would make these synchronized text elements, let's even be more dramatic. I'm going to copy this. Let's just start from scratch because I don't want anybody to get confused. So I've got this stuff right here. I want these to become synchronized text objects. So I'm going to go into the content panel. And I want to work with a collection. I can double click and rename this first one. And I might call this name and address set. And this could be name. So with it selected here, I'm going to click plus. And I'm going to call this title. I'm going to go to this guy, hit plus. I'm going to call it body. I'm going to call this one feature request. Because it says to me, guess what? I can't, if you do this, you're going to lose the styling you've just applied. So we'll just call that one feature request and leave it alone. So I've got title and body. I now can work in one of two ways depending on what you like. I'm going to copy this to the clipboard just to show you. But if I come into plan mode and I decide I want to do a phone layout now, and I create that phone layout, there's nothing on that phone layout page. I can either come over here and just drag my elements onto the canvas. So notice that they're coming over with just their simple text. I can then style them as I choose if I like to work that way. I can also give myself a leg up and copy and paste between layouts. I could then come in and make the changes to the text, make things larger so that they're more visible, perhaps change fonts, colors, placement, you name it. But at least in copy pasting, it's carrying over the default styles from that first instance for me to edit. So hopefully that answers the question well. Next question, says ma'am.
Could you repeat how and where you set the login credentials?
Maybe. So logins from the top to bottom. When I set up my hosting platform, GoDaddy, depending on how GoDaddy does it, and I did it and I couldn't tell you how to do it today because GoDaddy is so complicated, I have admin rights on GoDaddy, and then I created another user that has editing rights for that particular site. So you need to do that with your hosting platform. If you have one set of FTP credentials and you and your site owner don't care, then those are what you'll use. What you then do is when you go to InBrowserEditing.com, you log in. So InBrowserEditing.adobe.com. It's going to ask me about my domain here. I'm going to show you kind of an interesting trick. If I go to muse.adobe.com, now I host that on Business Catalyst. When I click that, it quickly says, you know what, I noticed that's a Business Catalyst website. What you want to do is log in to muse.adobe.com/admin, and I would use Business Catalyst's instance of in-browser editing. So because that's hosted on a different platform, or on our platform, we use a different way to log in there. If not, I put it here and then I enter those FTP details. Does that answer the question? All right. Hey guys, it's top of the hour, so it is time to stop. I do want quick feedback. Some sessions are easier to demo than others. This one's, it's all about making sure you're learning and we're learning from you. So let us know if we've hit the mark. If we didn't, if it fell below expectations, you have to tell me why in the chat. Jam sessions, we're doing styles and states and this trend known as minimal web design, flat design. We're going to focus on that next week, so come join us. Today's free widget of the week is, I didn't have anything that related to InBrowser Editing, so it's from Andrew of widgets.moo, and it's free for another 2 hours if you're watching this live, and you can get that from our Facebook page. It is a scrolling container on a page so that if you have a lot of information, you can allow it to scroll on the page. Okay, I'm going to go stop the recording and come back and give you the link to that. It'll be on YouTube later today. So bear with me, I'll be right back.